Evening. This is Friday, August 1st, 95 days until the 2008 presidential election. To that topic presently. First, if reporting by the Los Angeles Times today is even remotely accurate, the questions about the Anthrax attacks, which terrified this nation late in 2001, would seem tonight to have boiled down to three. First, was the anthrax sent by just one employee of our own government or more than one employee of our own government? Second, when the FBI missed an easy clue, the unreported spilling of anthrax in the federal repository of anthrax that the suspect did not report, was it incompetence or a cover-up? And third, how, if there was evidence of something askew at our biological warfare lab in Maryland as early as December 2001, why did national news organizations in this country receive supposedly reliable leaks from the Bush administration that the anthrax had originated in Iraq? Our fifth story in the countdown, there is finally a suspect in the anthrax attacks. He worked for the government's anthrax lab, and unfortunately he's dead as of this past Tuesday. His name was Dr. Bruce E. Ivins. The Los Angeles Times reporting this morning, NBC News confirming tonight, that the Justice Department was preparing to file criminal charges against him for the 2001 anthrax attacks. Dr. Ivins dying Tuesday at Frederick Memorial Hospital in Maryland, reportedly after taking a massive dose of prescription Tylenol with codeine. His lawyer today asserting his client's innocence in a statement, quote, "For 6 years, Dr. Ivins fully cooperated with the investigation, assisting the government in every way that was asked of him. We assert his innocence in these killings and would have established that at trial. The relentless pressure of accusation and innuendo takes its toll in different ways on different people, as has already been seen in this investigation. In Dr. Ivins' case, it led to his untimely death." In Frederick, Maryland, his neighbors stunned. But in court documents last month, a therapist saying that Dr. Ivins, quote, has a history of homicidal threats, asking for judges' orders to keep him away from her. In June, another Fort Detrick scientist, Stephen Hatfill, who had been the chief suspect in the anthrax attacks, finally and officially exonerated and receiving a $5,820,000 settlement from the government. Mr. Ivins having helped the FBI with its investigation of the anthrax attacks by analyzing the samples of the substance through his work as a leading expert at the elite U.S. Army bioweapons lab at Fort Detrick in Maryland, about 50 miles northwest of Washington. Shortly after the 9/11 attacks, of course, anthrax-laced letters are having arrived here at NBC News, at the Capitol Hill offices of then Senator Daschle and Senator Leahy, and at the company that owns the National Enquirer. Former Senator Daschle saying today that the FBI owes it to the country to provide some accounting of their investigation and their expectations for a successful conclusion. So far, many more questions than answers remain. The FBI, the Justice Department, the U.S. Postal Inspection Service today jointly announcing that there have been significant developments in the investigation, but confirming only that substantial progress has been made by bringing to bear new and sophisticated scientific tools. That Kennebunk Park, Maine, White House Press Secretary Dana Perino telling reporters that President Bush was aware of the investigation to an extent.
President Bush, over the years, has maintained an interest in this case and has periodically been updated by the FBI director on developments in the case, not necessarily so much in specifics, but in general, so that he can make sure that the FBI continue to work to try to solve the case.
So was he aware that this particular person was about to be indicted?
I think the president was aware that there have been developments, but for me to answer that question would be to comment on the story that is reported in the papers this morning, which I can't do at this moment, so I'm going to have to refer you to the Justice Department for now.
In the wake of the apparent suicide of an alleged suspect in the anthrax attacks, new questions being raised about the extent to which the attacks were used to argue for the invasion of Iraq. On October 18, 2001, a United States senator having raised that very possibility with David Letterman.
How are things going in Afghanistan now?
I think we're doing fine. I think we'll do fine. The second phase, if I could just make it very quickly, the second phase is Iraq. There is some indication, and I don't have the conclusions, but some of this anthrax may, and I emphasize may, have come from Iraq.
Oh, is that right?
If that may be the case, then that's when some tough decisions are going to have to be made.
We're joined now by David Willman, the Los Angeles Times staff writer who broke the newspaper story on the apparent suicide in the anthrax case. Thank you for your time tonight, sir.
Good evening.
How did we get from Stephen Hatfill being the only suspect in this case, at least to our public's knowledge, to Mr. Hatfill being exonerated and the imminent prosecution of a new suspect who then ends up dead?
What we reported in today's Los Angeles Times is that about the time that that new leadership was installed on this investigation by the FBI in late 2006, senior investigators ordered a reassessment of all potential leads and suspects and a reassessment of all assumptions that had been made about evidence already collected, on the chance that perhaps inadequate attention had been paid to those leads and suspects. And I think that hard ground pounding around those principles yielded fruit. And we have yet to see exactly what some of the breakthroughs have been with the advances perhaps in genetic analysis of the anthrax powder itself.
If this Dr. Ivins had first aroused some suspicion, obviously not enough, because he'd failed to notify his supervisors about an anthrax contamination in the lab in which he did his business in late 2001, is there any indication why it took nearly 7 years to exonerate Hatfill and come to the point of being on the verge of charging Ivins?
Well, those are good questions, Keith. Hatfill, by the way, again, we reported in the LA Times in June 29th, in great detail about the rather over-focus on Mr. Hatfill by the Justice Department and the FBI, to the exclusion of putting resources into other potentially promising leads and suspects in this investigation. You refer to that spill and Dr. Bruce Ivins' role in swabbing, in bleaching contamination by anthrax up at Fort Detrick. It turns out, by his word, beginning in December of 2001, he kept it a secret, didn't report it to his supervisors until April of 2002. And yet the final Army report on the incident said that, no one should be penalized here. We don't want to discourage folks from coming forward and reporting accidental spills. So why didn't the FBI or the Justice Department look more critically at that? I think those are important questions to put to them when they're willing to have more of a public dialogue about how they've handled this case.
Is there, in your opinion, having covered this story, having broken this remarkable story today, is there going to be more public dialogue about this? The man, the suspect, who is now basically having this pinned on him in his casket, he's dead. Are we ever likely to know not only what really happened, but much more than we know tonight?
I expect in the next few days the FBI and the Justice Department will attempt to make a rather thorough airing of the evidence that they had marshaled in this case. Bruce Ivins' lawyer is insisting that his client would have been proven not guilty at trial. We'll never know. But I think the FBI, I would be shocked if the FBI and Justice did not bring the totality of the evidence out in the public square within the next several days.
David Willman of the Los Angeles Times, our great thanks tonight, not just for your time in joining us this evening, but also your extraordinary reporting on this stunning development in this case. Thank you, sir.
Indeed.